The only constant is change. If you'll remember, in the last video, we looked at the impacts of adding a new project to our capital plan as regulatory standards required upgrades to our treatment plant. We were able to quickly understand that our existing plan of rate increases would not be sufficient. We were then able to develop a new plan of higher revenue increases in order to get back to a balanced forecast. So now that we have the model up to date with the latest and greatest information, we can now start to build a funding strategy that optimizes our capital funding to meet our needs while minimizing rate increases to our customers. First, our team has been working diligently to pursue grant opportunities to help mitigate some of the burden associated with these new capital needs. As a result of these efforts, we've secured $750,000 in grants that we can show in the model as a transfer into our grants fund. Next, to better distribute the burden of these capital costs, we can look to debt finance a greater portion of our capital plan, particularly our new treatment plant upgrades. Before we do this, however, we should revisit some of our financing assumptions. Interest rates have increased recently in an effort to combat inflation. In our debt page, we can see our existing debt payment schedules, as well as modify financing assumptions for 3 different debt types. Using our senior lien debt as our primary financing mechanism, we will raise our projected interest rates throughout the forecast period to better align with the current reality. Now that we've made adjustments to our funding sources and borrowing terms, we can return to our capital program to look at some alternative capital funding strategies. We are currently spending down our fund balances early in the plan by dictating several projects as cash funded and allowing several other projects to be optimized with the use of various sources of revenue and cash. We can likely improve this plan with new funding rules to better distribute the funding and tailor the sources to their best uses. To save time, I've already created and saved an alternative funding plan, so we'll recall this capital program and funding strategy. For example, we've set our annual R&R budget to be cash funded and set our sewer line replacement and upgrade projects to be optimized with the use of cash, sewer availability fees, and debt as needed. Of particular note, we modified the funding plan for our treatment plant upgrade project to first use the anticipated grant funds and then set the model to finance the remaining balance. This should better distribute our use of cash sources and enhance intergenerational equity in our capital funding plan. Using this updated capital funding plan, we can now return to our overview and see that we've improved the outlook. Using those rate revenue increases calculated during our last video, we are exceeding our targets, and it looks like we can bring those back down. If we recall our baseline increases, we can test how far off we are from where we started. We're still falling short of our fund balance target in the final years of the forecast, but it's encouraging to see we are looking much better than before. If I enter 4% increases over the next 4 years of the projection, we can ultimately arrive at a sustainable plan with increases greater than our original baseline, but greatly reduced from our initial model update. Finally, now that we've completed our journey, we can take a look back and compare each of our scenarios to understand exactly what changed in the dynamics of each. Starting with our fund balances, we are now following a trend much closer to our original baseline without excess balance accumulation after completing our large treatment plant project. For more clarity, we can limit our comparison to the 2 treatment plant upgrade scenarios, and now we can easily see exactly what changed in our capital funding strategy. Under our optimized scenario, we were able to utilize more cash sources, including grants in our capital fund, and make greater use of debt to redistribute our capital costs over the life of the new assets. We can see these same results in tabular form in our capital funding summary. Lastly, for a closer look, we can review our scenarios line by line in our cash flow forecast, comparing our revenue, debt service projection, and ultimate cash flows for each scenario. Through these 2 short videos, we've worked our way from a pre-established baseline to a very different and much more challenging set of outcomes, and finally to a more tailored and strategic capital funding plan. Ultimately, we produced a viable plan that met our increased capital funding needs while minimizing burdens on our ratepayers. This is a small snapshot of the kinds of scenario analysis and strategic planning that can be done in FAMS.